which side do you want to start on? The CT side or the T side? I'm sure you've generally picked the CT side when you're asked this, but what if I told you this decision is a mistake, and that actually, you should pick the T side first? Based on 1.3 million premier matchmaking games, we saw the team starting T side actually wins the game more often. But why? Isn't it better to be on the side that doesn't have to make the first move, the side that lets you just hold angles, the side that gives you a lead in the first half? I'm sure many of us think the same way, so are we just wrong? Or does it only apply to certain situations? We want to find out. When we first came across this data, the first place for us to check was the map. We all know that some maps are more CT-sided and others are T-sided, so maybe it's as simple as looking at what map it is and picking the stronger side. In the game's current state, half the maps are T-sided. Anubis, Dust 2, Ancient, Inferno are T-sided, while Mirage, Vertigo, and Nuke are CT-sided. So maybe it's better to start on the T side for these maps and CT for the others. When we do this, we get something a bit surprising. For the T-sided maps, this matches up. But when we look at the CT-sided maps, it's the opposite. On Mirage, it's actually better to start T-side. Same with Vertigo, and even for Nuke. The data suggests you should start on T-side for every map, even if it's CT-sided, which is quite surprising. So if it's not the map, then maybe what matters is the overall rank of the game. At lower ranks, the CTs might naturally be stronger since the Ts don't know all the ways of breaking into a bomb site. So we narrowed our search to games where every single player had an active rank, took the average of all the players, and grouped them based on the 5 main rank buckets. But still, the trend continued. Whoever started on T-side first won more often regardless of the rank of the game. If it's not based on the map or the rank, is starting T-side just actually better? There's one way to find out. What if both teams were as evenly matched as possible? We looked for games where the difference in average rank between the two teams was 50 elo or less. These are the results. Even when both teams are equal in skill, it's still better to start T-side on every single map. Do maps just become T-sided when teams are equal in skill? Well, no, because Mirage, Vertigo, and Nuke are still CT-sided under these conditions. But you might be wondering, how is this possible? How does the team starting T-side somehow win more if the map is CT-sided? Well, it's because the side win rates can actually be different for the two halves. For these CT-sided maps, the T-side win rate in the first half is just a little bit higher than it is in the second half. This slight edge makes all the difference. But this doesn't change the fact that we're starting at a disadvantage, so why start T-side? After all, we've all been part of this in some way, being blown out on the weaker side with no chance at all. Why expose ourselves to that risk? According to the data, in an evenly matched game, that's hardly the case. Here's the likelihood of each half score starting on T-side Nuke, the most CT-sided map in the game. We actually get a bell curve, where the score lands somewhere in the middle most of the time. These one-sided scores that we're thinking of don't actually happen that much in an evenly matched game. Okay, so we don't actually get blown out, but what's the actual advantage to starting on the T side? The advantage is at the start of the game, in the pistol round. Right now, pistol rounds are actually slightly T-sided, and this is true for every map. Here's where it comes into play. If we map out the T's chances of winning the first few rounds, it looks like this. Winning the pistol round is about 55%. If you win, you'll get an economic advantage in the second round, which results in an 86% chance of winning. If you convert this round as you should, then in the third round, your chances are about 50% once both teams have weapons. And if you win these, then you'll actually have a 73% chance of winning the game. How often does this 3-round streak happen? About 24% of the time, nearly 1 in 4 games starting on the T side. But on the CT side, our chances of doing the same thing are worse at 18% or less than 1 in 5 games. This 3-round streak happens a little bit more often starting on the T side. But you might be thinking, doesn't this advantage exist in the second half as well when you swap sides? Not entirely. According to the data, pulling off this 3-round streak in the second half doesn't contribute as much to winning as it does in the first half. This is because not all 12 rounds in the second half are played if a team wins early. And when a team gets close to winning, this affects certain decisions. That might mean more saving when you just need one round to win the game, or forcing a bye when you normally wouldn't in order to catch up. This is why side win rates are slightly different between the two halves. In the first half, the only focus is to win as many rounds as possible, while in the second half, there's more consideration on the overall score of the game. At the moment, the data seems to favor being on the T side for the first half and CT side for the second half. If starting T side gives you an advantage, can it overcome a better opponent? Are you more likely to beat a higher ranked opponent just because you start on the T side? We looked for games where the average rank difference between the two teams fell into one of these 5 buckets. Here are the results. Across the board, starting on the T side appears to be better, even as the rank difference gets larger. That said, as the lower ranked team, your overall chances are still much less than 50%, and they get worse as the gap gets bigger. So if there's a slight advantage to starting on the T side in matchmaking, what about at the professional level? We looked at these 8 Tier 1 tournaments from the first half of 2024. A little over half favors starting on the T side. If we combine all of them, starting T side is slightly more favored, similar to what we see in Premier Matchmaking. Ultimately in CS2, the difference between starting T side or CT side is a matter of a few percentages. You should still start on the side that you feel most comfortable with. But if you want to have data on your side, you might want to consider starting T side.